It's been too long. Welcome into the Women's Basketball Podcast. Mia O'Brien, Mitch Northam here to talk all things women's college basketball, WNBA, Unrivaled, and oh so much more. Mitch, it's been 10 days since we spoke with you live from the Final Four, from the national championship game in Tampa Town. You've recharged a bit. You've been on vacation, and you've also now seen the 2025 WNBA draft take place. What better time to reflect upon everything that's occurred in the last 2 weeks than right now, right here? How are you, my friend?
My foot is better, so that's good. Still wearing a sleeve, but swelling down, that sort of thing. Everything's good on that end. Yeah, went to the Outer Banks. That was a good time. Got to relax a little bit. Got to see the best man of my wedding, who was driving cross country, and happened to come through. So that was awesome. And then yeah, got to enjoy the WNBA draft from my hotel room in the Outer Banks on Monday night. So that was a lot of fun as well.
I'm just
So yeah,
very I'm just very happy that you were able to take a beach vacation despite the notorious foot injury off of a curb in Tampa, Florida. That just warms my heart.
yes, putting it in the cold water of the Atlantic Ocean was very good and very therapeutic, I thought. And then walking on the sand was also good. So shout out to OBX for making my foot feel better.
Well, speaking of feeling better, there are at least a handful of WNBA teams, maybe a dozen or so, that are feeling much better after the 2025 WNBA draft. Each week here on the Women's Basketball Podcast, we begin with our Her of the Week. This week, we're going to each give our Her of the Week, but we're going to put it into a collective, if you may, Mitch. Who is the team that, in your estimation, was the biggest winner? Maybe it's a player, the biggest winner on draft night.
So I'm going to take this answer in a different direction. I
Oh,
think the biggest winner of draft night, maybe not the biggest winner, but a winner that stood out in my mind was NC State because they had two players selected in the first round. The only team in the country to have two players selected in the first round. It's the first time ever that NC State has ever had two players selected in the first round. Sanaya Rivers is the highest ever drafted NC State player at 8, going to the Connecticut Sun. And then, of course, Isaiah James goes 12th to the Dallas Wings, where she'll get to play with Paige Beckers, which I think is going to be a whole lot of fun, on the broadcast. I think Rebecca Lobo said something like, Paige Beckers, Arike Gumawale, Isaiah James, who are you going to guard opposing defense? And I think Connecticut is a place where Sanaya will have the chance to develop and become a better player and, potentially get closer to reaching her ceiling, in some pre-draft calls. I think it was the GM of the Chicago Sky who called her maybe the most athletic player in the draft. So I know there were a lot of GMs sort of, anticipating her arrival and really excited about the potential to draft her. Connecticut gets her at 8. But yeah, I think it was a big night for NC State. Pretty good news here in the Triangle to see two players get drafted in the first round. So big win for Wes Moore. I think that's good for the program.
Wes Moore is your winner on draft night. Now that you took this in a different direction, I don't know if I should as well. I want to make our Her of the Week a certain reoccurring character on this podcast, but part of me wonders if we should just be the Her of the Week. We are the real winners, Mitch, because we were on the Sarah Ashley Barker train, I think, before
That's
anyone
right.
else. I would like to credit, because otherwise he will be mad at me, my boyfriend Kevin, because as someone who has watched the NFL draft religiously since he was about 6 years old and had binders that he would compile throughout the years of preparing for the NFL draft, he's gotten pretty good at this scouting thing and watching a lot of women's basketball with me. I'd like to think he's picked up a thing or two. And he said to me when Sarah Ashley Barker dropped that 48 plus or 48 point, I was going to say 40 plus, but it was a 48 point just burger. I don't even know what else to call it, against Maryland in a double overtime loss in the NCAA tournament. Kevin looked at me and said, she's got all the measurables and clearly she can score at all three levels. Why is no one talking about her? And we recorded the podcast a couple days later. And I said to you, there's a lot of folks who think she's going to sneak her way into the first round.
Mm-hmm.
She did just that. And quite honestly, Mitch, I think it's a match made in heaven with the Los Angeles Lakers.
Yeah.
I love to say it's just wow, Lakers. Wow, that's how you know. The Los Angeles Sparks, the Los Angeles Lakers, also a winner because now you get Sarah Ashley Barker in LA and Luka Doncic, all the star power.
I do think Magic Johnson might have sent a tweet out about her though, so she's welcome
It's basically
at
the same
Lakers
thing.
games as well. But yeah, I thought that after that performance, I had like a couple friends of mine, who are really interested in kind of looking at college players from a WNBA scouting perspective, and they like Sarah Ashley Barker even before that game. I thought, that 45-point explosion that she had against Maryland could catapult her up into like the 8 to 15 range. And, it turns out she goes number 9 overall to the Los Angeles Sparks. I thought that she might actually fall to the second round and go to the Atlanta Dream. And I thought that Tahina Pau was going to be the number 9 overall pick for the Sparks. It turns out, it was just swapped in my mind. But yeah, Sarah Ashley Barker, I think she has the potential to have a very good and long WNBA career. I heard one of the people on the ESPN broadcast kind of compare her to Sophie Cunningham, which I think is a pretty good comp. I saw Sarah Ashley Barker down at Tampa at the Final Four because I was at the WBCA doing a little story about this program that they have every year called So You Want to Be a Coach, where they basically take a lot of seniors from around the country and put them in this program if they're interested in coaching. And Sarah Ashley Barker was in that. And I think I sent a text to you and Dimitri, and I was like, yo, Sarah Ashley Barker is jacked. And could probably play quarterback for Alabama if they need that.
See, she could play for the Lakers, everybody. See, It wasn't just me misspeaking out of turn because we haven't had a podcast in 10 days.
I hear Tennessee needs a quarterback. So, maybe, if Sarah Ashley Barker wants to use an extra year of eligibility, but no, I think that she's going to be awesome in the WNBA and have a good career. And then I think we're going to see her on the sidelines coaching. So that'll be a lot of fun too. But yeah, it was cool to see her go in the first round for sure.
We did not debunk the myth / confirm if it was her older brother. We don't believe it was her dad, Jay Barker, at her table on draft night. We're going to get to draft table etiquette, though, here in just a bit because it's time for this week's starting 5, our 5 biggest storylines from the WNBA draft this week. And listen, we'd be remiss. We have to lead with her of the week, but there's no storyline that's bigger. There is no storyline that in Jacksonville, FLA, Mitch, has lit up the text line of the Jacksonville Jaguars and Florida Gators radio station, at least when I am on the air, because the people, they know they can talk WNBA with me. They know they can talk women's basketball with me. Then Hailey Van Lith cannot escape the clutches of Angel Reese. Or is this actually the best thing possible for HVL's career? What say you?
I think it's a good fit. I think Chicago is looking for a guard like Hailey Van Lith who can create for herself and others, who gives good effort on defense. I also think it's a good fit in terms of, she's going to get the chance to learn a lot from Courtney Vandersloot. A longtime veteran in the WNBA, potentially the best passer that we've ever seen in the WNBA. I think she is first or second all time in league history in assists. And yeah, we get to see her run it back with Angel Reese, albeit in a different environment, in a different system, and not with the presence of Kim Mulkey around, which I think will make a big difference. It seemed like Angel and Hailey were both excited about, potentially reuniting and playing with each other again. I think that maybe that change of environment and change of, the LSU coaching staff not trying to put Hailey Van Lith in a box, sort of, trying to make her square peg fit into a round hole kind of thing. I think that will be better. I think there's potential for this partnership to work in a new and different environment this time.
You mean that the Sky are actually going to let Hailey Van Lith take more than 4 shots a game? That's amazing. And yes, let's get the joke off. Oh, well, now there's someone to shoot all of Angel missed rebounds and missed putbacks. Har.
Yeah.
I don't want to do the dramatic reading, but I do. Producer Dimitri, maybe you add this in post. Here is tweet by tweet Angel Reese's timeline on Monday, April 14th. After several tweets about Anissa Morrow going 7th overall to the Connecticut Sun, we will circle back to that, rest assured. At about 8:45 p.m. Eastern time, when Hailey Van Lith was selected with the 11th overall pick, Angel Reese, yes, retweeted the Sky, then quote tweeted it. We ain't do it right the first time. Let's run it back. Then another retweet of the Chicago Sky's tweet that says #talk soon. And it's the picture of Hailey Van Lith and Angel Reese chest bumping during their NCAA tournament run. Chelsea Gray tweets out, "Don't sleep on an 11th pick." Angel Reese quote tweets it, says, "Oh, we won't, Cap. Thank you." Scene.
Yeah, I
No
think it
beef.
could work.
No beef. No beef. No beef.
Yeah, no beef. I think hatchets have been buried. I don't know that Haley Van Lith necessarily had a problem with Angel Reese in the past either. I think it might have been more a problem of just it was just a bad fit all the way around at LSU, from coaching to the players that she was surrounded with to everything else. I think it's very possible that this sort of chapter 2 of the Haley Van Lith Angel Reese partnership could be a whole lot better and could be fruitful for both of them. I had a friend of mine, who roots for Chicago sports teams, asking me about, I'm not really sure about this. I'm like, look, like as long as Haley Van Lith isn't asked to guard the best player on the other team, you should be okay. Which is what LSU asked her to do in a very important Elite Eight game, and then never wavered from it. So I think Haley Van Lith had a very good season, and I think her head is in the right place. Her game is heading in the right direction. Has a bronze medal to her name now as well. I think this could work. I'm optimistic about Haley Van Lith on the Sky.
Who do the Sky face in their season opener, Mitch?
I believe that is the Fever of Indiana.
Okay. We'll get back to that. We'll get back to that. Number 2 in this week's starting 5. Speaking of us burying the lead, take us away, Mitch, with number 2.
Yeah, so Paige Beckers, as it turns out, will play for the Dallas Wings after all. There was no Eli Manning of this. There was no John Elway of this. Kurt Miller, stuck to his guns and drafted her number 1 overall. Like, he basically telegraphed to everybody that he was going to do all year long. Arike Ogunbowale seems very excited to play with Paige Beckers, from her tweets from the national championship game to her tweets, on draft night. I think that this could work. I think this could be a good thing. The fans in Dallas seem very excited. There were lots of tweets, some funny ones. There were pictures of Paige, and they were like, it's not Luka, but close enough. Welcome back. So the people in Dallas need a new basketball star to root for, and Paige Beckers comes in, and I think she's going to have a great rookie season. I would suspect that she's the odds-on favorite to win Rookie of the Year by a wide margin. And I think that this could work. I think the Dallas overall had a pretty good draft. I think taking a swing at Isaiah James could be a very good thing for them as well. I think she's somebody who could have a long WNBA career, as somebody who kind of comes off the bench and provides a spark and turns into a good shooter and all those sorts of things. But yeah, I mean, this Dallas Wings thing, I think we're going to find out pretty quickly whether or not this is Paige Beckers' team or Arike Ogunbowale's team. We're going to have to find out pretty quickly, like, a thing that we talk about on this podcast, like who is the bus driver for this team, or will her and Arike be co-bus drivers? I'm curious just to see how that partnership evolves over the season, because they are both players. While Paige can be very effective without the ball in her hand, Arike is somebody who needs the ball in her hand a lot to, have a really good impact. And I think if you're the Dallas Wings, you would want the ball in Paige's hands as much as you can have it in Paige's hands. So just curious to see, like, kind of how that plays out. For the immediate future, she's a member of the Dallas Wings. We'll see how this evolves this season, and maybe 2 years down the road if a trade, request comes down the line or whatever. But we'll see. I think it'll be a lot of fun.
I agree with you from the perspective of, I don't know if there's anybody who can create their own shot better in the W right now than Arike Ogunbowale.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think in terms of facilitating, Paige would be the better point guard. And that's what's going to be so fascinating. I'm very fascinated by, I think they can share the reps. This can be a backcourt that goes back and forth, much like, I mean, I don't want to say it, but I'm going to say it. What we thought Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo were going to be forever and ever.
It was for like 3 months, and then it wasn't.
And then it wasn't. We're going to get to Hannah too in just a little bit, and Olivia Miles now at TCU. But yes, ultimately, I think that this is going to take time, just like the Caitlin Clark experiment in Indiana took time. They started 1-8, 1-9, whatever it was last year, because ultimately you have about 3 weeks to get to know your new squad, your new city, and and then away you go. And this year, you won't have the luxury, if you're Paige Beckers, of having the Olympic break that Caitlin Clark was so vocal about how that was so important for her team to really gel last season and figure out, okay, who do we actually need in the rotation to be the best version of ourselves?
Yeah, I think that there is potential for that partnership to work and the potential for that partnership to not work. And I think if you're the Dallas Wings and you come to the conclusion, I don't know, mid-season, like it's not working. I mean, maybe you have to trade Eureka and Guwale and get what you can for her. I think that you have to sort of mortgage your future on making Paige Beckers work and making her happy and trying to keep her in Dallas for as long as you can. I'm not 100% sure yet if Arike Ogunbowale is the type of player who can share the backcourt with her effectively.
And I think Paige's investment in Dallas was solidified by how personally she took the Tex-Mex barbecue debate, and that she felt like she had misinterpreted the question. She clearly wants to make a great first impression with the folks in the Big D, and I appreciate that.
It sounded like she was unaware of the term Tex-Mex.
Yes, that's what she said. She didn't know the term, which I found fascinating. But then again, she is from Minnesota, and having lived 3 years in the Midwest, there's a lot of words that they don't use out there or that they do use. Like cornhole is not called cornhole out there, folks. It's called bags.
Oh, it's not.
It's called
it's
bags.
Called what? Bags. Okay.
Yeah. It's very, yeah. They don't want to offend the corn farmers, I suppose. But yeah, again, things that take you like, wait, what? Oh, okay. It's the Midwest. This is how it goes. Speaking of the Midwest, the pride of Chicago, Anissa Morrow, number 3 in this week's starting 5. Falls to number 7. So many had her projected as the first ever pick of the Golden State Valkyries at number 5 overall, Mitch. Instead, she lands with the Connecticut Sun. This is a Connecticut Sun that will be faced with a task that no WNBA team that made the postseason the year prior has ever had to face, which is replacing its entire starting lineup, a new head coach too. What do you make of the Sun? And does Anissa Morrow suddenly rise to the top of the scouting report when you're facing Connecticut in 2025?
I think that the Sun are going to be very bad this year.
I do too, which is why I tried to paint the nice picture, so thank you.
But that's not because of Anissa Morrow. I think Anissa Morrow is in a good position, and like me saying that the Sun are going to be bad, I think Anissa Morrow needed to go to a place like the Sun where like she could play right away and figure some things out and figure out sort of how she is going to operate in the WNBA, because it's going to be much different from how she was in college, because in college, like your athleticism and your motor can go a long way. In the W, sometimes it's just kind of like you're undersized and it sort of is what it is. And you have to sort of create your own mousetrap and run your own race and figure out like how exactly you're going to be effective. I do think it's very good that she goes to a team that has Tina Charles on it. I think if Anissa Morrow can learn from someone, Tina Charles is a great person to learn from. But yeah, I think her and Sanaya Rivers both go in there, a place where like they can get a lot of minutes as rookies, where they're not going to be chasing a playoff spot. Of course, the Sun would love to make the playoffs next year. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to be very not good. But I think, just going to a place where like they can see the floor a lot and they can make mistakes and work through them in real time, I think will be good for their long-term pro development. I mean, I'm looking at the
Will
Suns
Marina
roster.
Mabrey be on the team in 3 weeks when the season opens?
I think so. I think she's locked in. I think the Sun have told her, we ain't trading you. I mean, we'll see. She was actually I saw a tweet that she was sitting like front row at Anissa Morrow and Sanaya Rivers' like intro press conference.
Okay.
So that's good. I think she may be resigned to the fact that like, okay, I try to get out of here and they're not going to trade me. I mean, I'm looking at their roster and like Marina Mabrey might be the best player on this roster. I mean, they also have Diamond Shields. Sure. Yeah, I think this is going to be a very not good team. But we'll see. Maybe they'll surprise us.
The other side of the coin there is that the Golden State Valkyries do not draft Anissa Morrow with the 5th overall pick. Could you please pronounce our Lithuanian friend's name for me, Mitch, so I don't butcher it?
Oh boy, I'll try to do my best. I think it's Juste Joyce.
Yes, Juste Joyce. I think it's Juste. Yeah.
Yes, our friend from Lithuania. Yeah, I gave the Valkyries my lowest first round draft grade of anybody. I gave him a C minus for that pick. I just think
Some have said, second Luka Doncic reference of the program, some have
right.
said she's the European Luka, which is fascinating because we're also going to get to, or the women's version of Luka from Europe. We're also going to get to the female Wemby later in the starting five too.
Yes. And I think with her, Juste, it's there's a lot of questions about. I know like everybody is enamored with her offensive versatility, and she's a master of the pick and roll. But there's also a lot of questions about her defense and her durability. And I think like when you're picking number 5 overall with the Valkyries, that pick there, like you could have went out and got your point guard of the future, so to speak, in Georgia Amore, or if you really wanted to take like a swing at somebody who has, excuse me, a high ceiling, you could have taken Sanaya Rivers. Or if you wanted to take someone who was a little bit more of like a sure thing in terms of a point guard, and you wanted to kind of just turn your team over to her in the same way that TCU did this year, you could have taken Haley Van Lith. So they take a gamble here. I think there's potential for Juste to be very good. I did like what the Valkyries did in the second round where they took Cheyenne Sellers, who fell. Like if you want to talk about a prospect that fell a lot, I think that was her. They were able to get her in the mid-second round, and there were some people who had her going number 5 overall with that Valkyries first pick. So you do get sort of your point guard of the future, perhaps, if Cheyenne can, if her knees are okay,
Right.
if she can play. So, I like what they did in the second round. I have some questions about that pick from Lithuania, but we'll see. We'll see if it works.
Yeah, the Cheyenne Sellers fall for me is frightening only because it says to me that there were questions on the medicals. And
yes,
for her sake, because she was such an exciting college player, it makes me very sad.
Yeah, and she was supposed to play in the women's college all-star game down in Tampa and pulled out of it about a day or two before. So that tells me, yeah, maybe things are not quite 100% right with the knees. But very, very happy for Cheyenne Sellers to see her get drafted and to see her get engaged. I saw, Faith Masonia sitting there at the table with her. Yeah, so that was cool to see. I think you have some other thoughts about table etiquette though.
Table etiquette. And it's funny that you bring up Cheyenne. So first, before we pivot away from the Valkyries, do want to shout out Caitlin Chen. One of the best stories. I love whenever anyone gets drafted from the crowd. And I will tell you that I had more than one person text me, more than one person sitting on my couch, i.e. Kevin, say, if there's anyone who I want to get drafted out of the crowd, the Kate Martin candidate of the year, I want it to be Caitlin Chen of UConn/Princeton. And indeed, that was she wasn't our first drafted out of the crowd, but she did get drafted out of the crowd.
A player who did not get drafted out of the crowd, Deja Kelly, who was not invited to the draft, but showed up anyways and walked the orange carpet and then didn't get picked. I just thought that was very interesting. Just a thing that I noticed.
Interesting.
Meanwhile, I was told Alyssa Utsby was in the gym working on the night of the draft at UNC.
Listen, Deja's going to come for your and my job if she doesn't make one of the.
Absolutely. I think, I tweeted, I think after Oregon lost to Duke in the second round, which Deja had a great game. She had 20 points, but I was like, if it doesn't work out in the W for Deja Kelly, like she's going to be on TV talking about it very soon. So,
yeah, no worries.
Maybe that's what she was doing there. She was just
she was practicing. Maybe doing the interviews. I'm here to get
some camera time. Yeah, for sure.
She's trying to network with any of the reporters and the networks. Very smart on her behalf. Always be marketing, Caitlin Clark.
Yes.
Okay, so the table etiquette. Here is my thing, Mitch. I don't care if it's women's basketball. I don't care if it's the NFL. I don't care if it's the NBA. What is rule number 1 when you are being drafted? Who do you hug first, in your estimation? Is there a rule first and foremost in your eyes?
I would say if it was me personally, like if I was in that situation and I was drafted, it would probably be either be my significant other or my mom or dad.
Okay.
Probably.
Correct. Especially if you are married like you are. And so, and even if it's a boyfriend, girlfriend, I think that ultimately the boyfriend, girlfriend, significant other has been in the picture, probably for somewhere between 5 to 15 years of your life. Your parents have been in your life the entirety of your career, your life. the reason you are standing here today, sitting at said table. And so for me, I think you should always go to the parents first.
Sure.
I was just so taken aback, and I hope that this doesn't get play on the internet, but it probably will. I was so taken aback when Paige Beckers' name is called, and she stands up and she doesn't know what to do. And I understand she was worried about having a nip slip and having a wardrobe malfunction. I totally get that, which I don't know why. I get why she changed outfits. Probably was some sort of endorsement. I respect that. Again, always be marketing, Caitlin Clark. But the fact that she stood up and like looks around and like doesn't know what to do, then goes to AZ, then goes to Gino. Oh, and then she goes to her parents, and I think her dad like slapped her butt or something like that, or they high-fived or like so. Like, how do you, Paige Beckers, we have known since what, 2020, that there was a chance you would be the number 1 overall pick at one point or another in WNBA draft history. How have you not practiced? How did you not know? Like, this is what it's supposed to be. Last year with Caitlin Clark, it was like, okay, I thank my mom, I thank my dad, I thank my brothers. Connor's not allowed on the stage because, well, and then I see Bluter, I give Bluter a hug as I'm walking, and that's the process.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Paige needed a rehearsal. Like, all right, I'm going to hug my dad first, and then AZ, and then, if we have time, I'll get to my stepmom, and then, Gino and whatever. Yeah, I feel like there was, something missing there. You mentioned like the fashion of the draft. I don't
hang on before we get to the fashion.
Okay.
Mia, you're wrong. This is about your future. With your significant other's a part of your future. I mean, listen, I love my mom and to a lesser extent my dad, but I make it clear to them anytime they are asking me about something that my wife is not down with. Like, I don't like you as much as I like her. Like, I'm always going to default to my significant other first.
But you and your wife have also been together for 20 years.
That's true. That's true. We have now been together more than half of our lives. So,
and to Mitch's point earlier, Cheyenne Sellers did not go to her fiance first. She went to her mom.
Listen, I don't think there's a right or wrong way to do it. I'm telling you, I can't imagine thinking about my future and wanting to celebrate that with my parents more than the person that's going to be a part of it. All right, I'm dropping out now.
Fair.
I appreciate the counter. I appreciate the counter argument, and he makes a great point. But ultimately, it wasn't even the going to AZ and Gino first. It was just the deer in the headlights look. I'm like, Paige, you have to have practiced or at least thought about this moment. You have to have some idea. You've watched the WNBA draft every single year. And yes, so while for some it was just a minor little moment, and I also respect the fact that she was definitely freaking out about her outfit and the worry of, oh my goodness, I have to put my phone here because I don't want this blazer to pop out. At the same time, come on, like, how do we not practice this? I was just a little disappointed. And because that was the first overall pick, from that moment forth, I was judging every single person and who they embraced first.
Yeah. My the fashion thing that just like struck me was, and like I said, I don't have an opinion about this. I'm a 33-year-old, straight white male who has no sense of fashion whatsoever. But like everybody sort of seemed to be going for like the same style, and that everyone's sternums were exposed.
I didn't know that that's what was in, but maybe that's what fashion is. Maybe I gotta go buy one, I guess.
Yeah, I'm
hosting UNF's award show for the athletics department on Monday. Maybe I need to go get one of these.
Yeah, we don't have like shirts under like the jackets anymore, or we just okay. Cool.
It was pretty much across the board too. I mean, it was Madison Scott. Who was the other player? Was it
Isaiah James?
James. I think Juice. Like, it was multiple players, and I was just like very surprised. I was just like, oh, I didn't know that was what the fashion thing to do was, but evidently it is. But I'll get off my soapbox as we round out this week's starting five. Mitch, for you do believe, as much as we have questions about the female Luka, the female Wemby may have just entered the WNBA.
Yeah, totally. I think American audiences should get familiar with Dominique Malonga very quickly. She's been compared to Victor Wembanyama. She's 6'6" and has a 7'1" wingspan. And it was just like every time she was mentioned during the broadcast, a highlight of her dunking played. I can't remember who tweeted it now, but they were like, I don't want to be the first WNBA player to get posterized. But I think that is coming. I think Dominique Malonga is going to dunk on somebody, and we're all going to go crazy. And I think it's going to be a fun thing to kind of watch her develop and play over the next couple of years with the Seattle Storm. I thought that was a great pick by them. I mean, really a no-brainer. I was reading some of my friends over at the Next who do a great job of like putting together a big board and kind of evaluating the talent coming into the league. And they put her ceiling as, quote, Lisa Leslie with a 3-pointer, just for kind of, an idea of like how good Dominique Malonga can be. I was kind of thinking about her in the context of like, if Caitlin Clark is like our Michael Jordan, and this is sort of like late 80s NBA, can Dominique Malonga be our like Dominique Wilkins? Is that
Ooh, I
possible?
like that. I like that.
So I think that could be a lot of fun. So I'm here for Dominique Malonga. I would like to see her do well. I'm looking forward to just seeing her in action in the WNBA game, and throwing down some dunks. Who doesn't like a dunk?
Exactly. I love Dunkin' Donuts, especially. Just perusing, and I also forgot that Katie Lou Samuelson is now a member of the Seattle Storm. Side tangent there. Just perusing that roster. What do you make of the Seattle Storm and the post-Jewel Lloyd era, and adding a player of this caliber who certainly has the potential to one day become that next face of the franchise?
Yeah, I thought that they're picking Malonga. I think there were a lot of people that thought, oh, bro, really they could go for a guard here because they lose Jewel Lloyd and all that. But I really, really liked what they did in the draft overall. You get Nika Mule didn't really play last year because she was hurt. They do have Skylar Diggins-Smith, and I really like their pick of Serena Sundell. Later in the draft. I think she's somebody who could have a really good WNBA career. I mean, she's a big guard at 6'1". She can shoot the three, led the nation in assists. Like, she has really, really great court vision. So I think your backcourt is kind of set. So I like the Malonga pick. I think it's possible that maybe Seattle competes for a playoff spot this year. Maybe they're, sort of one of the last teams in, or, right there on the line. I like their roster. You still got Nneka Ogwumike, you got Gabby Williams, you got Lexi Brown, you got Ezzy, Jordan Horston's there.
They added Alicia Clark. They added Erica
Clark.
Wheeler. I think they're going to compete for like the oldest roster, despite the fact that they have a 19-year-old true rookie who is, expected to maybe take a little bit of time, but could also set the league on fire.
Yeah, I think Malonga has the potential to like have a really, really strong year with all of these veterans around her. Interested to see, how the minutes are distributed in the backcourt because, like I said, you have Skylar Diggins-Smith and Nika Mule, and then you add Serena Sundell. You also have Zia Cook there, who I forgot about, and Lexi Brown, like I mentioned. So it's an interesting roster. I think it has potential to be a playoff one, but we'll see.
That rounds out this week's starting five. We will get back to the W here momentarily, but first, it's time to update. Cue crazy music. The transfer portal in 2025. Ah, yes, folks. For those of you who may have missed it, arguably the top three names at the start of transfer portal season when the portal opened are all off the market. Olivia Miles off to TCU, Cody McMahon, the new villain in women's basketball, truly perhaps to some, now headed to Ole Miss, and Tanaya Latson leaving Florida State to go to South Carolina, the direct domino, and now the biggest question remaining, where will Mylasia Fulwiley end up, Mitch? Because I don't think she's going back to South Carolina.
No, I don't think so either. I think Mylasia Fulwiley's days as a Gamecock are over. I was, it was like really big news when this happened, but I can't say I was like totally shocked because of all the things that we've talked about with Mylasia Fulwiley all year. And the fact that like she didn't really get better this season at South Carolina. She played basically the same amount of minutes. I added it up. She played just 36 total more minutes this season than she did as a rookie. She averaged 18.9 minutes per game. Her field goal percentage dropped. Her 3-point success rate nosedived from 34.3 to 25.8. Her assist turnover ratio was worse. Her PER was worse. Her win shares, her defensive rating, all worse than they were when she was a freshman. But like, we know that Malaysia Wiley is a star and has potential to be like this really awesome player and has the potential to be a face of women's college basketball. Steph Curry sees it. You know, the Curry brand and Under Armour, like they signed her to an NIL deal. She's got a signature shoe and the whole thing. I don't understand. I guess what we might learn at some point is like if there was a relationship breakdown between her and Dawn Staley and how that occurred over time. I mean, it was very clear to me that like just watching South Carolina as much as I have over the postseason over the last 2 years, that Malaysia was always on like a short leash in that, you know, if she played a game, you know, very undisciplined or had a lot of turnovers or had a lot of defensive lapses or plays where she wasn't giving effort on defense, she was getting yanked out of the game. But there were also times where Dawn asked her to save the Gamecocks, and a lot of times she did. Most notably, most recently, that Sweet 16 game against Maryland. If Malaysia Fuwali is not on that roster, the Gamecocks are losing in the Sweet 16. You know, she did it as well in the SEC tournament, those quarterfinals against Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt comes back, makes it really, really tight there in the fourth quarter, and then Malaysia, you know, puts her foot on the gas and they win that game. So I think it's a bit of a fumble by South Carolina to lose Malaysia for Wiley. And, you know, I don't know where she's going to end up next. I did some speculating over at a story for SB Nation just to kind of throw out some fun names. Like, you know, Ole Miss is a place that was in Malaysia for Wiley's top 5 when she was a high school recruit. And we've seen Coach Yo do very well in the portal. Louisville is another place that was in for Wiley's top 5 when she was a high school recruit. I mean, maybe she's a fit with Jeff Walls. Maybe she's not. You know, one of the reasons why she stayed and committed to South Carolina, she grew up in Columbia. She wanted to stay close to home. So that's why she went to South Carolina. Maybe she still wants to stay in state and maybe goes to Clemson. And, you know, Sean Poppy's got things cooking there. They finished the season strong. He's done some work in the portal. Do you want to be the face and like the catalyst for like this changing era of Clemson women's basketball? That could be attractive to her. And then there's the thing of like, I don't know how much influence Under Armour and the Curry brand have in her decision making and all this, right? But like if she wants to go to a school or if they want her to go to a school that wears Under Armour, you know, the University of Maryland is a place that could use a guard to pair with Bree McDaniel in the backcourt. And I believe that is the school that the founder of Under Armour is a graduate of. And I'm sure that a bag could be situated for her at Maryland if that is the case. Another school that wears Under Armour that is now in need of a guard to play next to Hannah Hidalgo is Notre Dame. So I think like as my mind sort of spun about potential landing spots for Malaysia for Wiley, those were the most intriguing to me. Like if Under Armour is in play, Notre Dame and Maryland are interesting. If they're not in play, if you still want to stay in state, maybe Clemson. If you're just looking for like good basketball fits, maybe Louisville or Ole Miss. So that's where I landed.
But here's the thing, Mitch. You have your ear to the pavement as much as any reporter in the sport, and there have been no leaks. There has been no news as to where Wiley could end up.
Yeah, and I think she entered the portal with like a do not contact tag, which means a lot of people interpret that as, well, they already know where they're going. It's not necessarily that all the time. A lot of times players choose to enter with that do not contact tag just so they can control the process, so they can contact schools instead of coaches blowing up their phone. You know, Malaysia Fuwali doesn't need to hear from every Power 4 coach in the country. She probably has an idea of like, realistically, there's maybe like 10 schools that I would play for. And so I think, you know, she goes in with that new do not contact tag for that sort of scenario. So she can control the process. So her agent can control the process and sort of talk to teams in that kind of manner.
I love the Notre Dame poll because the next player on our list, Kate Koval, represents the mass exodus out of South Bend. I don't have Notre Dame's roster pulled up in front of me, Mitch, but correct me if I'm wrong. I don't know if they actually are going to list Kate or any of the players who, maybe the incoming freshmen. But ultimately, this is a team that has one player coming back from last year at this writing, and that is Hannah Hidalgo. I cannot wait for the full court press series from ESPN to come out in the next few weeks, because I need to know the behind the scenes of what transpired that final month of the season that led to the deterioration of a team that was number one in the country for so long. But then also B, what does this mean for the future? Because clearly Niele Ivey has drawn a line in the sand and has said, I'm on Hannah's side, and if you're not with us, you can leave.
Yeah, I think that I'm very curious to see, in terms of that ESPN doc, how much control the teams had over that, or how much control the players' camps had over that in terms of like editorial direction. My guess is a lot, because that's just sort of how these things
I can tell
turn
you,
out.
From a source in Iowa City last year, yes. Not only did the University of Iowa have a lot of say and Caitlin Clark's part in it, but the Clark family also had a say.
Yeah. And I was told that Notre Dame's comms teams had a big hand in crafting that Players Tribune story that came out from Hannah Hidalgo. So my guess is that we unfortunately are not going to get a whole lot of juicy details about what went down with Notre Dame at the end of the season. But I'm hopeful that we do find some information out, because like you mentioned, Hannah Hidalgo from this starting five is the only player that's coming back, from this most recent Notre Dame team. Sonia Citron, Leah Tukang, and Maddie Westbeld all off to the WNBA. Olivia Miles is at TCU. Kate Koval, who was second off the bench in terms of minutes played, she is off to LSU, where I think that's a solid fit. I guess Cassandra Prosper is coming back, so that's a good thing.
That's a name. That's a name on the roster.
Sure, yeah, that's good. But like I don't know, man. Notre Dame needs some help. They're gonna have to figure some stuff out and figure out how to. I mean, you're now at a point where you need to figure out how to maximize the rest of Hannah Hidalgo's time in South Bend, because you're going to have her for 2 more years, because she's not going to turn 22 next year for the draft, so she's not going to leave early as a junior. So you have Hannah Hidalgo now for 2 years, and basically you need to figure out how to maximize the rest of her time. And right now you're looking at a roster that has Hannah Hidalgo and Cassandra Prosper, and I guess they got a transfer commit today from Kansas State, Gisela Sanchez, who averaged 4.2 points per game. I mean, sure, you're going to need some bigger guns, I think. So Notre Dame has work to do.
One other name for you in the transfer portal, and who would that be, Mitch?
Oh, Kara Dunn, who leaves Georgia Tech, was kind of part of the post Nell Fortner retirement exodus there. She was somebody that NC State wanted really, really bad. And like NC State saw her as the Madison Hayes replacement, essentially, as sort of like somebody who could kind of play that hybrid 3-4. Kara Dunn, very good ACC player this past year, was an all ACC selection, I believe. I think she averaged like 15.5 points per game and like 5 rebounds, shot well from 3-point range. She goes to USC, which is, I think, a good fit for her there as well. But I know that she's somebody that NC State wanted really bad. And, so she goes to USC, who is kind of in the midst of their own sort of roster rebuild. I think trying to figure out what next year's roster is going to look like, probably potentially without Juju Watkins a part of it, because I think it's very likely that she misses the entire season unless there's some sort of medical miracle that allows her to, come back early. But I imagine no one is pushing her to come back early, because why risk it, right? So yeah, interested to see kind of what USC does the rest of the way here. The other Georgia Tech player who recently committed was Tony Morgan, another really solid player from Georgia Tech who, was a multiple-year starter under Nell Fortner, 13.7 points per game, 5.6 assists per game. She goes to Kentucky, where she's probably going to step into the shoes of Georgia Amore and probably be Kenny Brooks's point guard for the next year anyways. So, those Georgia Tech players, pretty good. But Karen Blair, she has some rebuilding to do down in Atlanta as well.
Since you brought up Karen Blair and, of course, Nell Fortner, the changing of the guard at Georgia Tech, we pivot to the coaching carousel. Only one significant movement this weekend, and that would be, Mitch.
Yeah, so Arizona made a hire to replace Adia Barnes, who left Arizona.
As detailed at length in on this podcast, go back and listen to the national championship reaction. We've got a whole section there about our friends at SMU.
Yes, long story short, Arizona was happy to see Adia Barnes leave. Adia Barnes was happy to leave Arizona. SMU was happy to pay her buyout and happy to give her some
Everyone's
resources
happy.
happy to give her some resources to go get some players out of the portal. So Arizona replaces her with Becky Burke, who is 35 years old, a former Louisville player under Jeff Walz. Was on some of his early teams there. She's kind of been climbing the coaching ladder, over the past decade or so. She started at, I believe, a like NAIA program back in 2016, where she won. Then she goes to Charleston in West Virginia, where she wins. That's in Division II. Then she goes to USC Upstate, where she goes 8-15 her first year, but then 22-8 her second year. And she parlays that into the Buffalo job, where she goes 12-16 her first year, then wins 19 games. Then this past season wins 30 games and wins the WNIT. So like she's somebody who has a consistent track record at really every stop of like turning teams around and winning a whole lot of games. So I think it was a solid hire by Arizona. They gave her a pretty solid salary pool in terms of like what to work with for an assistant base there. Her actual salary is pretty low for the P4 level, but I think that might be sort of a prove it contract where like we saw last year with Kim Caldwell, like that wasn't a ridiculous number. But then she wins big this year and goes to the Sweet 16 and immediately gets a reworked contract and extension. So you could see something similar here for Becky Burke. So that leaves us now with no P4 openings. All of them are filled, and we have just 6 openings at the mid-major level in the Division I ranks right now. I think most notably San Jose State is still open. Buffalo is now open, of course, because of Becky Burke leaving. Prairie View A&M, Cal State Fullerton, and UMass Lowell, and to round us out, St. Francis, PA, which I believe is dropping down to Division
Yes,
III.
they are.
So they won't be Division I for much longer. So
I've never heard of going from Division I to Division III. Like I know St. Thomas up in Minnesota went from D3 to D1, and that was kind of unheard of. But the inverse is even weirder.
House settlement got folks spooked, is all I can say. I don't think it's going to be the last one that does it either. I think we're going to see. I've heard Matt Brown of the Extra Points newsletter. I think he was recently on Split Zone Duo, also on recently with Ovius and Dimitri, I think. And I think I've heard him say several times that like we're going to see more kind of mid-major teams drop down from D1 to D2 or D3 because they don't want any part of the house settlement.
Listen, they made the NCAA tournament in men's basketball. Hang the banner. Fly forever. It's all good. Check the box.
Shout out to Jamal King.
Shout out to the Red Flashes. Yeah, Luke Hetrick, you get a shout out as well. And speaking of shout outs, it is time for last call. Final notes, anything we missed. Let's begin with this, Mitch. The WNBA preseason officially begins on May 2nd. We will get some of those preseason games nationally televised. Shout out Caitlin Clark effect, of course. But also what I'm really excited for is a lot of these preseason games taking place at college venues and going to other parts of the country. And I know this tends to happen here and there, but the fact that it's so proliferated in 2025 and pretty much that opening weekend across the board, you'll have games in South Bend, certainly a game in Iowa City. For me, I think that's growing the game, and I think it's great intel for the W to figure out, hey, maybe we've got some traction here, and maybe we don't put a team in this college town, but maybe a nearby city could be a draw.
Yeah, I think that Iowa City game is certainly going to be a sellout if it already isn't.
Oh, it is. It's sold out in under an hour.
Yeah, and you'll probably have a good crowd for that game in Notre Dame as well. I think we had a game at South Carolina last season in the preseason. So yeah, I think those are cool things and yeah, good things to do for sure.
May 17th is when the WNBA 2025 season officially tips off. Of course, we will be back before then, May 16th, excuse me, on the Friday. We will be back well before then. We will have a little preseason awards, if you may, edition of the pod, and maybe even a player interview or two. We're working on that. And so don't worry, we're not going anywhere. We will be here. But technically these next 3-4 weeks, all about training camp, that condensed, unfortunate 2-3 weeks. Okay, figure out how to play together that the WNBA calendar year unfortunately dictates. But we're almost back. The WNBA season is almost here once more. Mitch, do you have any shout outs or closeouts before we get out of here?
Just to friend of the program, Sammy Puisis, who was signed by the Chicago Sky to a training camp contract, which is awesome to see. I actually watched her while I was in the Final Four in Tampa a couple of nights before the game. I think it was Thursday night. She was actually competing in like the 3-point shootout at the men's Final Four in San Antonio, and they had it on at the bar, and I was watching it with her coach, Jose Fernandez. So that was cool, and awesome to see her get a shot in the W. She's the 9th player coached by Jose to get a W contract. By the way, Jose doing some work in the portal. I think USF is going to have a good team again next year. Probably be the team that's the favorite in the American like they are every season. So, shout out to Sammy. Shout out to Jose. Shout out to USF.
Shout out Bulls. Shout out to you, our loyal listeners of the Women's Basketball Podcast. Really appreciate everybody sharing the pod, especially as we make the turn now to the W season, especially our friends in the Triangle. I really enjoyed, Mitch, some of our coverage, especially of transfer portal season these last few weeks. The number of times Corey Smith, I know in particular, like reshared us and was like, hey, make sure you listen to Mia and Mitch. Their breakdown of why Olivia Miles is going to TCU is what you should be listening to. So we appreciate you guys because sometimes I don't know what I'm talking about. So greatly appreciated. See me referring to the Los Angeles Sparks as the Los Angeles Lakers at the top of this podcast. I promise we will be back before a 10-day hiatus like last time, in which I decided to forget exactly which team's mascot is which. He is Mitch. I am Mia, saying we will catch you next week.
Deuces.